Senator Massey. She's coming to talk to me. Senator Massey's here with me. We're going to talk about some stuff. Sent out a survey yesterday. We're going to go down the survey a little bit and talk about that kind of stuff. I'm going to take the opportunity to talk a little Fourth Amendment stuff, and we'll go from there. We'll see what's new and what's happening on the state level. Short intro because we have better things to do than listen to my music again. Everybody listens to that every time. So get that out of the way. Becky, thanks for coming. I'm glad to talk to you again.
Glad to be here. Sorry we can't be in person, but this works.
Yeah, you need to come. We need to schedule you again in the future to come in person. I've completely redone the room, and I'm like 80% into this fully new setup that's much more immersive. I still can't figure out how to keep the dog at bay, but other than that, we're getting a better space. So, a couple months ago, I got kind of overzealous in trying to read a county commission situation because they were approving an expenditure for the sheriff's office, and I kind of jumped to a conclusion that it turned out I was wrong on. And part of the reason I got to said conclusion because I saw that there is a drone usage bill that you initiated. Is that correct?
Yes. Excuse me just a second.
It's fine.
I always have my phone turned off, and for some reason.
Not a problem. Not a problem at
all. There you go. Got it taken care of.
And so there's a drone usage bill that's going through right now. So help me understand a little bit more about the way that's supposed to, what's the plan? What is the intended usage, that we're trying to adjust? I guess let's start at the beginning. Like, what is the current allowed usage that we're adjusting to the new?
Okay. There are, drones are allowed, and for public safety. And this is just, the Knoxville Police Department brought this bill to me. And basically there are 7 approved uses, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not going to be able to tell you the exact, but it is already legal to be used in 7 cases. What this does is expands it to 3 more. And basically what this is more large public gatherings. Like if there is a giant concert, like if they had that in the Las Vegas shooting where they had that giant number of people outside, they would have been able to find the victims a little quicker and through public safety. Or in cases where protests go violent, they could find the people, the perpetrators, and the ones that were really doing the illegal actions, as opposed to the people that were just happened to be there peacefully, expressing their First Amendment rights. So those are really the large gatherings, and then also in a crime scene, one, to make sure that the law enforcement is doing the chain of command and doing the chain of evidence, rather, and doing everything correctly, and just to help assist in that. So really, it's just adding a couple other, or actually 3 other categories.
Okay, because I guess where I get lost in it, and this may not be in the specific of it, is like, I guess so the first one is that if part of it is to keep law enforcement on their toes, for lack of a better word, to keep them honest about how they're, doing the chain of command and custody of evidence and whatnot. Who has access to review it? Will this be accessible to a defense attorney pushing back against something, or is this only accessible inside the police departments themselves?
It would be accessible. I mean, it would be evidence if there was, it would be used as evidence if there was a crime committed or something inappropriate. Yes. And it would be discoverable.
Right. As soon as,
I haven't started presenting that bill yet. So I have like 50 bills and, I'm probably not going to be able to go into the finer points of it yet.
You incidentally answered the other question I was going to ask, because one of the things I was curious on who brought this to your attention to make it happen, and you answered that in that KPD was asking for it. Because one of the things that we've been talking about a lot is, the who answers to who game. And as a county residents, the sheriff doesn't really answer to anybody locally. And, kind of how that all shakes out. I mean, he answers to us in election. That's part of the game. I get that. But at the end of the day, between elections, short of something so atrocious that we feel the need to recall him, he's kind of left to his own devices, and I don't know how I think we could do better, but it's just the premise pops up into my head that it's concerning to me. So I got this survey from you yesterday. It's super exciting. I love surveys. And we went down through it. And so I'm assuming that one or each of the questions on the survey kind of coincides with something you're working on.
Well, not necessarily something I'm working on, but something that will be, that would likely be before the legislature this year. Now, some things that are on there I might not see. Well, I definitely won't see until they hit the Senate floor, if they make it through committee.
Okay, so this is okay. So what you're saying is this is stuff that is being worked on, but not necessarily in your subcommittee or in your office directly, but that somebody in your office anticipates it coming around somewhere.
Some of them I am working on. Some of them, it's just that is going through the process.
Okay, and so the big one that jumped out to me, well, there's a couple of them, but the one that jumped out to me specifically was the number 2, should Tennesseans be exempt from requirements to take a COVID-19 vaccine based on religious convictions? The issue with that one to me is there a conversation that it is going to be a requirement for residents to have the vaccine, period, regardless?
No.
Okay.
There are people that are concerned that it could be required. And the way state law is now is that their citizens have a right to a religious exemption, a faith-based exemption, except in the case of a pandemic. So we're in the middle of a pandemic, and people were concerned about that. There was a bill. It actually last week, I guess it was last week, got time bleeds together when we're down here.
Understood.
But it got defeated in the House, in a House committee, subcommittee, actually.
Okay, so the idea of this specific one is that in anticipation of it being added to the list of exemptables under the current standard.
Basically, what the new bill was is it would take out the word pandemic. So it would say that you could exercise your exemption, a faith-based exemption, regardless of being in a pandemic or not. Nobody would be forced to take the shot.
Okay. I'm still all right. I'm still a little lost on that.
There is a secondary one that is similar, and I'm not sure where that one's going. But the idea is there are people that are concerned either their faith because they don't take shots, mm-hmm. or their faith because of things that they believe are in the vaccines. There is some thought that in some vaccines, not necessarily the ones that we're using right now, but maybe so, but that there are some aborted cells that had been frozen years ago and that are being used. So people have different beliefs, and it is a faith-based belief. Now, the bills that have gone through are strictly for the government, basically, and schools and government. But it wouldn't, if a business requires it, we wouldn't be able to prevent that.
Okay, so all right, so it'd be if you're an employee of the state, and you could theoretically, on faith-based, avoid it because it's required by the employer, in this case being the state, where if it's a private employer, it's a separate conversation. Okay, that makes sense to me.
But also students.
Right.
Students.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And then in the depth of it, I didn't know these workings as I'm reading down the survey, and so I could track on that. But okay, and then moving on to number 3, and this one, for whoever is your data collector, if you can find mine, which I didn't put my name on it, so you can't. But I don't necessarily want to change my answer. I just, the way the question is it's a little off. The number 3 was, do you favor the use of cannabis for medical purposes for patients with chronic diseases, as long as it can be dispensed under the supervision of a physician and pharmacist? My answer is no, but that's because I don't. The second half is really the problem to me, not the first. I think we need to have medical. I think we need to have full recreational. I think we talked about this last time you were here. I think anyway, To me, this is going to be our next lottery conversation. And you remember the lottery when the lottery came in and all the political hullabaloo and, we're Tennessee, we're not into that, blah, 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 blah. But then somebody realizes Kentucky and Georgia and everybody else are making bukus of tax dollars off of lottery revenues. So now we have the lottery. That's my interpretation of how it happened. And that's my interpretation of how I think legal marijuana is going to happen in the state, especially if it goes federally legal first. But I feel like this is an opportunity to be an early adopter and really get the revenues in place and really get the structure of local businesses in state to do it. Because as long as it's federally legal, we can't import-export product. And if we can't import-export product, that means it has to be made here, distributed here, and sold here, which is business, 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 therefore tax, tax, tax. That's my pitch on that. I'm sure you've heard it before, but that's my full pitch on that. I don't smoke pot. I don't like it. Never have. So it's not a I want to play thing for me. I think it's good for our economy as a state to get on sooner than later. So that's my only push on that. I certainly want it to be available medically for people who actually can use it medically, but I don't see why we don't just go ahead and push all the way over. Thoughts?
Okay. There have been a medical marijuana bill, medical cannabis bill, basically at least for the last 10 years. And at first it's getting a little more traction. There are 3 viable bills this year that are moving. One is a task force to look at how we would set it up once the feds deschedule it. Okay. The second
See that? Hold on, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that in and of itself is the thing to me, is that it is a known future at this point. I think everybody acknowledges it's a known future. And so I agree we need to figure out how to set it up, but let's not wait for the feds to do their thing. Like Governor Lee said, was it the 10th Amendment? We need to be careful with what the 10th Amendment's going on between the federal government and our state. And this is one where we should be ahead of the curve, not behind. I'm sorry to interrupt. Continue. That's
okay. There's another one that goes ahead and authorizes medical cannabis, and there's certain parameters around that with certain diseases and things. And the third one is one that I'm carrying that, so they all kind of have their part in the picture. Mm-hmm. And mine is basically, until we legalize medical cannabis in Tennessee, whichever way we do it, that if someone goes to another state and purchases it legally, it would be decriminalized. Okay. And we did that. I actually carried a bill similar to that six or so years ago for CBD oil with THC in it for basically for kids with intractable seizures, the huge amount of seizures. Right. And so one of the problems is you have law enforcement that swears to uphold the law of the land. And so they have this push-pull because the law of the land is that it is illegal. And so it's a fine line that you have to walk. So at this point, according to my last conversations when I carried this bill, the other one, the CBD bill, is that we really couldn't make it legal. We could just make it, decriminalize it.
Make it not illegal, right.
And you can't have doctors in the state that prescribe it because it's illegal on the national level. And so they take an oath they can maybe talk to you about the pros and the cons. They can diagnose your whatever illness you have. I have a brother-in-law that died of ALS, and watching him go through what he went through is the reason that I support medical cannabis. Right. I watched it. And when you're talking about people that have got significant illness and major illnesses, critical illness, are in hospice, it's not going to be a gateway drug. It's something to help them on this path that they're on.
Right. My argument's always been it's only a gateway drug because of who you're buying it from, not because of what it does. Because it gets you in contact with the black market dealer out there who does the other things. It's not necessarily that the substance jumps you into the next level. It's the need to go black market for the substance gives you access to the other things. And then, if you're, plus it's unregulated, you got a black market dealer. What's to stop him from cutting it with some bad stuff that gets you hooked on something different and all that kind of jazz. And so, yeah, I'm a big proponent of legal weed. I think it's 2021. We're past this. So we need to just get it in place and move on.
It's still hard to get it through judiciary, and law enforcement is there battling it when you're trying to pass it.
Right.
And, so you definitely have some people that make it hard. So I will have it in front of judiciary here in a couple of weeks, probably.
What number is that? Do you know off the top of your head?
No, I'd never remember my bill numbers.
I don't. They're so confusing to me too. So,
I can look it up for you.
Oh, we could figure it out later. I'll find it for you, and I'll make a note on it.
While we're talking, let's see. It is Senate Bill 667.
667, SB 667. Noted.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a bunch of other stuff going on that I've been paying attention to. One of the big ones for me, the libertarian that always likes to at least kind of feel like a libertarian. I think they're House bills. I don't know. Okay, so procedure question. I hear they always call them partner bills or sister bills or something like that. So anything that's in the House, there's a Senate version of?
Yes.
Okay, so
if there's not, it cannot be passed, period.
Okay, and so there's two things that libertarians are big on. It's civil asset forfeiture, and I know there's one running around about removing the bond requirement to get your stuff back if it's seized. And then the other one is the number of petitioners you need to get a new party on a ballot. And I don't know the number on that one, but I believe that's a House bill as well. I do not recall who put that up. But those are two big ones that I've been kind of paying attention to because it's of interest to me and my semi-party affiliation. And I wondered if you'd seen them yet or if that's anything you guys have discussed in office.
I haven't seen, I know we've had it in the past. I haven't seen the one on the number of people to put people on a ballot.
Okay.
I have seen a little bit of the civil asset forfeiture. That is another bill that I wouldn't see, really see the debate until it would come to the floor.
Okay.
And it does, what happens is a bill goes in the Senate. We don't have subcommittees basically in the Senate. So that would probably go to judiciary, I would think. And if it passes judiciary, if it has what's called a fiscal note, a cost associated to it, it then will go to finance. Finance, either, they would have to see if it's funded or not. If it's not funded, it would go behind the budget, and then they would see through the budgetary process if it could get funded. If it doesn't get funded, it can be the best bill in the world. But I'm not talking about that specific one, but any bill that has a large fiscal note, if it doesn't get funded, it can't pass. So after the budget is passed, they go back to finance, and the bills that are funded, then they pass. The bills that aren't funded don't pass.
Okay, so
go ahead.
This one in particular, it would just literally, I don't know. Maybe this isn't a good conversation because you haven't actually seen it yet, but what budgetary concerns would something like changing a petition count cost?
I don't believe that one would. I was talking about in general, though.
Oh yeah, I know. I understand that. I'm trying to think of both the abstract and the.
I wouldn't think that one would have really. If it had a fiscal note, it'd be very minor.
Okay.
I would think so. I can look that up after a while, but I think if you're talking about civil asset forfeiture, that could have. And I haven't looked, like say, you really focus on during session. You've got a lot going on. There's 1,600 bills total.
Right.
So you focus on the bills that you are sponsoring and really the ones you're starting to carry that, in the next week or so. And you focus, because some of those you're having to work through some of the process and get some amendments done. And then you focus on the bills that are in front of your committees. I'm on transportation and health committees. and then you focus on what's before you on the Senate floor.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a funnel.
Right. I get it.
And
Yeah, that makes sense. Because that brings up a couple of the other survey questions, whether you want to build a bypass in Knox County and then the extended authorities for nurses to do a little bit more separate from their doctors, because those go under both of your purviews. Is there a real conversation about a bypass again? Because what we're going to do like the last time we did a bypass in Knoxville, is we're just going to spread Knoxville out to make it not bypass it anymore.
Yeah.
That's how 640, that's how 640 works. So
there are a number of people there that will not be any legislation this year, but their conversations have been started. There is an infrastructure committee through the Knoxville Chamber that I'm on.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been some conversations there. There's been a I-40, I-81 corridor study, which brought out some issues there. Because of a bypass is such a long-term solution, they typically talk about expanding lanes and metering and things like that. But out of the 5 highest traffic count spots in the state, 4 of them are in Knox County.
I mean, it makes sense.
4 of them.
Yeah.
4 of them.
Yeah, we're a huge intersection.
I would not have thought that. I would have thought they'd all been in Nashville. But so I think it's worth a conversation and looking at again. Obviously, I think it would be a wider bypass than what was originally talked about the last time we were talking about a bypass. But I think we need to have that conversation, because one of my things I talk about in the Transportation Committee is how can we get more proactive? Because of the growth of Tennessee, and we're going to continue to grow, we're having to be more reactive than proactive.
Correct.
And to me, this bypass is something that for our Knoxville community would be more proactive.
Right. And I think there's some local stuff that we could do county level that would help as well. I am guilty of it as much as the next resident, that we use 40/75 to get here and there just as much, if not more, than everybody driving through for purposes. So there's some county level stuff that we could do to kind of minimize the local traffic on 40 that would certainly assist in the process. But I agree. I think it's a long-term, something needs to be looked at. And again, same thing with Potbell. It's like, let's get ahead of the curve instead of behind it. I'm in full agreement on that topic of conversation, as far as trying to be more proactive about a lot of the things that are in front of us, which then leads us into, it's money. That's where it all comes to. Are we going to spend the money today or wait and spend it later? And that's always the hard conversation that really gets had. I don't know how we make our decisions as far as how we spend our money on the state level, but it's always we never seem to catch up, I guess is what I'm getting at. So how can we really look forward to things like that and spend the money to save the money in the future?
Well, it's interesting. I was at a lunch one time with Governor Haslam, and I said, the good thing is, if we have $100, and obviously it's more in the billions, our budget this year is $41.8 billion. But if we both had $100, you would spend it a little differently than I would spend it. But the good thing is, in Tennessee, we don't spend $105. We'll only spend the $100. And Governor Haslam said, no, Becky, we only spend the $95, and we put the $5 in our savings so we can be prepared for that, that into our rainy day fund, basically. And thank goodness we're not like California and Illinois and some of these states that have huge, huge deficits. And that, we do balance our budget. Now, we are required to balance our budget in our Constitution, so we don't have any choice. But the state government has, been operating fiscally sound. Now, yes, there are things that we would all rather spend some more money on. I mean, you've got education, you've got mental health. From my field, folks with disabilities, you've got our roads. I mean, we can always come up with things that we ought to be funding more money on. But what we are doing is making the state a more attractive state. So more people are moving here, developing businesses here, developing our base basically. And so we're growing and having more funds to be able to spend on some of these things that we need to spend them on, or that we all each want to spend them on. Tennessee is one of the fastest recovering states from the pandemic. And I was listening. Dr. Fox was on the Channel 10 Sunday talk show yesterday. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it, but you ought to go back and watch it. It was really good. But one of the things he said during the pandemic was, when we were starting to come out, is that we should not take any of our reserves, our savings this first year, because we did not know how long it was going to take to get out of it. So we're on course on that. We're coming out a little quicker than we thought we would. Although, some of the industries like our airports, it's going to be 24 or 25 before they're back to level from where they were. They've had our biggest hit. But, it's, some of the way the funds are spent is you take the priorities of the governor. You take the priorities of some of the members of the legislature, and you have to advocate for it. Right. And sometimes it may take several years to get whatever you're trying to advocate for up the ladder, basically. So that's that's kind of a general overview.
Right. And again, full disclosure on me, I didn't pay a bit of attention for years and years and years. And as I got excited and got interested and got following stuff, I was very excited to hear about the Rainy Day Fund thing, that's a thing that we put forth effort into doing. And have continued to grow it. Is there a conversation at all about when we say it's full and stop adding to it and start spending some of that money and then just actually setting it over there? Like grandma had her coin jar buried in the backyard, and that was in case of emergency, you go dig it up, but she didn't keep adding to it until the end of time. Is there a max that we're looking to get to?
Well, I think, and I'm not sure exactly what that kind of target is, but it does it correlates with your total budget too. So that as your budget grows, right, your rainy day needs would grow. It's kind of like what they recommend a family have in their savings, if for some reason they had a
like 6
disaster.
Months, right. 6 months living expenses, right. Something like that.
So we're at $1.5 billion right now. And I think, we still do need to continue to grow it. But it's just like this year, as we've had some of the extra funding, and a lot of that was attributed to some of people spending their CARES money. Mm-hmm.
Which we're about to spend some more of.
Some of it was attributed to, about a year or so ago, we went into place the internet sales tax, and that has helped a lot, and really helped a lot of our small counties, that people leave those counties to go to Knoxville or Nashville to shop. And so that's another thing that has helped us this year too. But as we've had this extra money, you have two pots. You have recurring money and you have non-recurring money. And your non-recurring is best, you cannot put into salaries or things that are going to have an annual expense, but you can put into things that will save you money in the long run, whether it's rebuilding some schools, investing in things that really will save you money in the long run, and investing in broadband, things like that.
Right. Now that does bring me to another thing that I've been talking to. I forgot the name. Your whoever answers my emails for you.
Austin.
Yes, and has been fantastic, and I've been very appreciative of the communication there. And I've had my KUB issue that I'm currently having, and then you have Governor Lee's broadband conversation. And I was actually talking to Dr. Lundy here in County Commission earlier today about it, about whether we are going to try to utilize broadband. And if that's whether it's the indirect or direct goal, because I can see it both ways for sure. Like it is 2021. If you don't have internet, you're not really alive right now. You're not really communicating or taking place in what is the culture of an economy of where we are. And so I could get the idea. I get behind the idea of it being utilized, but my personal issue that I'm having with a utility is what concerns me on adding new things to a utility under the umbrella of utilities.
Well, as in most things, that shouldn't be one solution to the whole problem. I mean, our one provider would be the one answer. Excuse me. I think that it's good to have our internet providers, and most of them do a good job. But the utility companies can bring something to the table to help, especially in some of the areas that don't have broadband.
Right.
Now, out in my district, out off Rutledge Pike, there is an area that they cannot get broadband. And so, you don't think of Knox County as being one of the rural counties that doesn't have broadband, but we do have pockets that in our county that can't get it. I know KUB is looking at it.
Right. I got the survey a couple days ago.
But there is, the governor, I think, I think it was 200 million in broadband expansion. But then they just announced last week that there's going to be an additional, and I think this is coming down from the federal level, but 15 million in accessibility broadband grants. Okay. So hopefully that's going to make a huge, huge dent. 15 million is a whole lot more than two, I mean, so
any is more, I guess, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, just wandering through the different things that are going on. I mean, so we'll go back. Did you have a good time on Saturday, other than you ended up working even though you weren't supposed to be working?
I always try to find a way to help.
It was, and for me, it was very interesting. I had multiple new experiences. This is the first time I've been to an official party event. And I actually wrote an article for the Compass here in Knoxville on my experience there, which is weird. I'm not a writer, obviously. I'm barely a talker, but I try. So
you do a good job.
Well, I appreciate it. And so
it was a great turnout. It was great to see a lot of folks and a lot of friends there. But it was really neat, the number of people that came for the first time.
Right.
And
right.
That section, that's exciting, and so there's just a lot of interest in people to get involved.
Right, and I agree with that part for sure. I guess I don't know. See, part of my problem in trying to write and talk about it is I don't have a reference. I've never done anything like that before. The nearest reference I have is watching an RNC or a DNC event on TV, like on a presidential election year or whatever like that. That's the nearest thing I have, and so like. It wasn't quite as hoo-ha as some of the ones on TV are, but it was still. I mean,
there was no balloon
right.
drops,
and no hats. The hats, the weird little hats that they wear. And I looked up the name a couple weeks ago because we were talking about it, and I forgot. But I don't know. Like I'm curious to see it. I very much like Randy Pace. I thought he was a great dude. He's great for the show. He's fun to talk to, for sure. And I had Daniel on a couple weeks ago, and I'm excited to have him back on and see how he is sculpting the future of the local party here, because it's because as I'm quickly learning that there is a pretty strong dynamic between city and county, politically speaking, and I'm curious to follow this as the powers that be are trying to adjust the color scheme of Knox County. So. Anyway, that was fun. That's all to finish that.
I'm glad you could come.
I'm glad I could make it out too. I wish I could have hung out longer. I had to go back to work. At some point, I'll start accumulating enough sponsors for the show that I can retire and do this full time, but not yet. So, in my standard elected official question, I always ask any elected official that's on here: what have you been working on, or have had either directly or indirectly that may not be getting any coverage? Because a lot of stuff gets. I'm getting to the point where I'm seeing more stuff than normal people are seeing. So something that normal people might have missed, or even slightly following stuff like me might have missed that you've been working on, that you would like to take the opportunity to give it a little bit more light.
Okay. The first one is something that I actually started working on back in 2013. It's a constitutional amendment that addresses the incapacitation of our governor. We are the only state that doesn't have that. And it's something that's like almost never used. I've found 3 or 4 times instance nationally that's been used. But if something should happen to our governor, we'd muddle through it, but really we constitutionally would not have anybody in charge. And so way a constitutional amendment works is you have to pass it in each General Assembly is 2 years. So you have to pass it in one General Assembly by a simple majority, and then you have to pass it in the next General Assembly by a 2/3 majority. And then it goes on the next gubernatorial, the next ballot when there's a governor's race, and it has to get over half of the votes of the number of people that vote for governor. So I passed it simple majority last year, and then it passed in the House. Monday night, last Thursday, I passed it with actually unanimous, other than the lieutenant governor, because it sets him up as the person that follows the governor if he was incapacitated. So he did what's called blue lighting it because it would affect him.
Right. He abstained for personal interest.
Basically.
Gotcha.
Yes. So it passed unanimously. So now it goes to the House, and they will start the process there to pass it with 2/3, and then it should be on the ballot in 2022. And so, that's something that it needs to happen.
Right.
But it's not a fancy, and hopefully is never used, but we need it in our Constitution.
Right. And it's a neat civics lessons in how to get a constitutional amendment on the state of Tennessee Constitution. So basically where it's some sort of vice presidency setup or some sort of backup plan in case something happens, that
Correct.
there's not anything official on, and we need to get it in the Constitution so that one day, if it eventually does happen, hopefully not, but when and if it does happen, we have a program set in place. This is what we do in the case of.
And it's a temporary replacement. So one instance that some people know in their history, you're still a little young for this, but when Governor George Wallace, there was an attempted assassination. He had to be temporarily replaced until he could come back to work, basically. And it was the incapacitation the temporary replacement lasted for 32 days.
Okay, so let me see if I can clarify. So McNally, if God forbid Lee was actually assassinated, there is a succession plan. There's just not a temporary cover your bases until the governor recovers from something plan. Is that right, or is there?
Correct.
Okay.
We in the Constitution it addresses the death of the governor.
Okay.
It does not address the incapacitation. So another history lesson: the only time we've had a death of a governor was in 1927, and that was when Governor Austin Peay, who we've all heard of, Austin Peay College.
Right.
He was governor. He died in office, and the Speaker of the Senate was Henry Horton. We've heard of Henry Horton State Park, and he became governor. That's the only time that has even ever been used.
All right, I like it. That's that. That is something that is interesting. That could definitely use. People should want to know that.
Two other quick things that I'm working on.
Yeah,
One, through my background at Sir Thomas Center serving adults with disabilities, is making the state a model disability employer. Basically, the state, through a lot of its departments, encourages or has providers find employment opportunities for people with disabilities, but they don't ever walk the talk. And so this would set up a system that they could try to increase recruitment, training, retention, and advancement of people with disabilities. And this can be anything from visual, auditory, mobility, or intellectual, basically any kind of disability. But it would set up a system in place for our Department of Human Resources to kind of help all the departments work to employing people with disabilities. So that was funded last year in the budget, but it got waylaid with COVID. And so it is funded again in the governor's budget. So I'm working it through the process now.
Okay. That is neat as well. I like it.
And the third one is the stadium project.
Okay.
And both the city and the county came to me about that.
And that one, I mean, that one's definitely getting attention. So
It is.
for your end of it, it's just the tax district thing, or is there more to it than that?
Well, for my interest, for my end, it's setting up a system. So then it's basically making it permissible.
Uh-huh.
And then it's going to be up to the locals whether they pull the trigger.
Right.
And we've got such, I know there's a group that is not supportive of it.
Yep. I had him on the
But
show.
when you have 100% of the county commissioners have been supportive of it, we have a resolution from all of the county commissioners, and city council will be voting on it this week. And then both mayors have been supportive of it. It's my job when my local officials come to me and bring me a piece of legislation that they need for their community. As their representative, it's really my job to carry that.
Right. And that's one of the things for me as I've gotten deeper into the baseball conversation. I'm having Mammotoff and Kimball and the triumvirate of planners, I guess, for lack of a better word. They're coming on here later this afternoon, and we're going to talk.
Mammotoff will be great.
I'm scared to death.
He knows his stuff.
I think he's going to just melt my brain a little bit, and I'm just going to go blah for a little while because I can't. I can't keep up with this mess. Yeah,
I had to take notes when I was. He did me a briefing for me because it's I've not dealt with things quite like this before. So anyway.
Right. And so, but for me, one of the things that I'm struggling with is as I'm watching what's going on, and maybe I'm a little better off than others because I'm more involved in it, at least conversationally, is that like things like what you're talking about are requirements for the thing to happen. And I understand that as a premise, and I'm understanding that more now, especially with the tax district thing that has to go through state legislature as well for you guys to give us permission to keep most of our sales tax revenue here for that and this, that, and the other. But as a lay spectator, I could see that as a check mark on the box of completing it. And so you said it correctly in that it's we have to check all these boxes to then have the big check, which is the whether or not we're going to do it. Because
Correct.
The last check can't happen without the rest of them. But that's one of the things that I'm struggling with and trying to make sure I clarify to people is that none of these means it's happening, but it can't happen without these.
Right. It's a step in the process.
Right. And so,
and
again, like I struggled with helpless is not the right feeling, but just kind of feeling the inevitability. It feels it does feel inevitable that it is going to happen, and these are the reasons why. And I have to remind myself that these are not the reasons why it is or isn't going to happen, and that's a separate conversation. But these things have to happen before we can have that conversation.
Right, and I think people that have opinions about that need to really be talking to their local elected folks because they're the closest to the community. I personally am supportive of the project. I think it's I grew up going to Bill Meyer Stadium, and our family was involved with the Smokies growing up, but I also ran Sir Thomas Center, which was right across the street from it, and I saw what happened when that left. And being 2 miles away from where this project's going, where there really is nothing right now, just the excitement of that expansion and the development in that area is going to be huge. And I've seen what the development around the Nashville Stadium has done, and it's exploded. So I'm very optimistic about the project. I mean, I know people have different opinions, but right now we're getting nothing from it. So anything's going to be an improvement, and it's not just a baseball stadium.
For sure. And
it's going to be multi-use, open 365 days a year.
And I think the real thing is trying to understand the financing. And I think that's
right.
Because, I think really at the end of the day, if I understand the financing correctly, it's hard to say no to at this point. Other than if I feel like I want to, if I resent the fact that Boyd gets to do it, then that's my only argument against. But if the financing makes sense as I understand it, then it's not it's not taking away anything to do it from any budgetary things that exist.
Right.
And
with the guarantee already of bringing that additional investment around it to make it more successful,
right, that
we wouldn't have otherwise. So it's not asking us to, we're not saying we're going to build it, will they come? We will build the core, but the areas surrounding it's already agreed it's coming.
Right.
And I mean, so you've already got that jump start of the apartment buildings, condos, the restaurants, things like that will help make the stadium and everything that happens at the stadium more successful.
Right. And right, exactly. That's and my initial, and especially the libertarian in me is like, no, just no, period. But I try to be a little bit more realistic than full on whatever. So I think I'm shifting gears a little bit. Like if it was a ballot item and I had to vote today, it would be a hesitant yes, but it would not be a fervent no that it was 4 months ago when we first started talking about it. So they've definitely done a good job, for me at least, trying to illustrate how this is working. And that's what I'm hopeful for in this, is that we can really get the financing part out, so that the conversation about how it's getting paid. And the only real question that I'm excited to ask about and see what the answer is, that I don't know yet, is what happens if nothing happens. If we build the thing and the next pandemic or something else comes along and nothing happens. And it's not likely, but it's an option, and I'd like to hear that part of it. But I'll talk to them about that when they get here. Okay, so this one's I like talking to people. I like letting you talk and talking over you, because I talk a lot. But I don't ever want to put on a show where I'm trying to like poke and prod and be like rude or mean. But this next question, from Saturday. I didn't understand it, and I'm hoping you can help me understand it. Burchett referenced a socialist in the city council, and I was really confused on that, because I don't know of an open socialist on the city council, or Marxist rather, excuse me. He said Marxist. And I don't know who to ask or where to start and trying to figure out what he was talking about. I haven't tried to email his office. That's above where I like to go, because I like to stay in state. But, I don't know. I was wondering. I was wondering if you know what he's talking about, I guess, is the question there.
Well, I think there are, I believe it's a couple, and I'm not going to name names, but that there are a couple of people that have run as part of a particular socialist party.
Okay.
And so a couple of the new members, and that was kind of their group, that they recruited candidates and they ran as a part of that. So I think that was where he was coming from.
Okay. Again, like it's just one of those. It's certainly my fault for not having a little bit more history in front of me about what's going on, and it's a reference before my time, essentially. And so it was just, I don't know. It just struck. It felt foreign to me, and I guess I that's my fault, not anybody else's. So I don't know what else you got. We got if I ran out of things that I specifically wanted to talk about. The drones was big on my list. The going through your survey a little bit was big on my list. Talking about stuff that people aren't talking about was big on my list. I'm the constitutional amendment thing I'm really excited about. That's fun. I like it. Back to the survey, I'm mad at the idea of the constitutional carry, just because I just paid for all my permits and stuff. But obviously I don't care if people carry guns. That number 8, that's the one. I'm sorry, I can't believe I missed that one. We'll close off on this one. We'll talk about this a little bit and call it a day. So the local health board conversation, which has been huge here, as far as how authority lies in times of, well, that's, I guess, the first question is, if I understand it correctly, the Board of Health has the authority, with or without a state of emergency, to do what they're doing. Is that accurate?
I think it is in a state of an emergency.
Okay. So
but sometimes there's all these finer points of it that you kind of basically, but you're not entirely sure. So there's a lot for me to keep up with too. So you think there's a lot for you to keep up with, and I try to do the best I can.
Well, I don't have people knocking down my door like I'm sure you do. I don't have as many phone calls and emails as you get on a daily basis on topics, but.
Well, I try not to give facts and figures unless I totally have them. Now Senator Briggs, have you had him on there yet?
Not yet, no.
You would enjoy having him. He's fascinating, and he's the one that can state all your facts and figures. And I'm more of a how do you get things done, figure
Right.
out the way to get it done.
That has been a lot of fun in the show, is the different personalities of how people like to focus on things, like super historian peoples that know all the little histories of stuff, super stats people, super money people. It's really fun, the different personalities that go along with the positions.
Well, and Senator Briggs's history, I mean, he was in the Army. He's a thoracic heart surgeon, and he actually operated on 3 international presidents. So, plus everything he knows. So he's my go-to source on a lot of things. But one of the things that, as far as the legislation that, and I can see both sides of the coin. I mean, I know it's been really confusing for people in Knoxville when the governor comes out says, okay, we're going to do this. Tennessee's going to be doing this, except for our 6 counties. And so people in Knoxville will think, oh, we can open up the restaurants or something. But no, we have to follow Knoxville. So I feel like there's been a lot of confusion on that. And I'm not sure that it might not be better to have it all kind of statewide. I know in Texas, because my girls live there, that when the governor opened up, they said, unless you've got this many cases per county, but if you have less than this many cases, your county can stay open.
Right.
I mean, so there was some parameters put on it, but it was statewide. So I can see the argument of making something statewide just because of the confusion. I know we've got folks that, do events and venues and things, and they go, I could only do it for 10 people, but they could go the next county over and do it for 50 or 100, and
Right.
So you've got this unfair advantage type thing. So I see that side of the coin. I see the side of the coin where you really do listen to your health experts, because it is that, but the governor was listening to his health experts. So, I can see all that. The only thing that I think that I almost feel we're better off is not making a decision while we're in the middle of it.
That makes sense for sure.
I tend to think that we'd be better off to get through it, see where it all ended up, how it ended up, and then really give it a good look on what really does work best for our state, for our county. I mean, and really, we're a large county, so we affect our state. So is it better to keep it as it is? Is it better to give it to the chief official in your county, or is it better to do it statewide? And I think that needs to be a more in-depth conversation. In the scheme of pandemics, as far as while this has been more transmittable and more people have gotten it, the percentage of people that have died, while have been horrific, the number of people that have died,
right, what it could have been versus what it is, right?
Compared to SARS, compared to some of those others, if they were as transmittable, it would have been horrific. I mean, and so, and I'm not a doctor. That's why I recommend you talk to Senator Briggs, because he can bring out all the medical parts of that. But I tend to think that it would be better for us to have a good conversation and really look at it more in depth with all the different experts before we enact a piece of legislation.
I could get behind that.
But I will not have a vote on it unless it makes it through the committee process to the floor.
Okay,
it's not on a committee I serve on.
I think for me, one of the things that needs to be added to the conversation is I don't know how to say it other than we need to define what a state of emergency needs to be. I think at some point this wasn't an emergency more, and this was the new way of life. And that's where the transition to me makes sense, is when this is life, at least for a long period of time, then that needs to be your job, the mayor's job, the county commission's job, to start making those adjustments to how we live life. Where if it's a real sudden immediate emergency, it makes more sense to keep it with something that can react quicker than the government can, because it's built that way. We want the government to be slower. We don't want them to knee-jerk react and have a crazy result. So we need to have structures in place that can act quickly when needed in an actual emergency. But that's what's bothered me about it. And I understand the state's stance on stay in a state of emergency as long as you can. There's federal money. Let's get it. I get that. but those things kind of work against each other in trying to settle this down and move forward as a community. And because it's a new world, there's no, 99.99% of these vaccines get out and everybody's vaccinated and we're not wearing masks and all that stuff all the time anymore. There's a new planet that we live on. It's not the same as it was now over a year ago. Finally, we hit the year mark of when it really came into Tennessee. So, this is life, and this is going to be life in some way, shape, or form. It's not an emergency anymore, so we need to look at it more in that way. That's kind of my issue as it's going on.
Yes, last week was the year's mark of the tornado. Right. And the first case of COVID. Right. I mean, I actually was able to go up in the helicopter with the Commissioner of Safety to review the damage of the tornado. And I actually had to get in my closet when the tornado went through. Right. So it's very vivid memories for me, but it's been a year that none of us will ever forget. Absolutely.
It has been and we accidentally started doing the podcast right along with it. And so it's been
you do a good job with it.
Well, I appreciate it. I hopefully the content doesn't wane as the pandemic does, so we can keep doing our thing. Well, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate doing this. I have a great time. Hopefully we've educated some people on some things and we've learned a little bit something about what's going on. I wish you the best of luck on all the things you're working on. If you need anything from us, please feel free. Is there anything else that you want to get out before we finish up?
Just know that we're here to help folks in Knox County if they need help wading through the state government. Just give our office a call, email us, and also I do an e-newsletter weekly during session. If you're not getting it, you can email our office also to get on our list. There's a great unsubscribe button if you ever get on and you're ready to get off. I don't send it that much off session, but just during session.
And I like your Facebook page. It does most of that stuff as well, pretty quickly and easy. And that did remind me, I apologize real quick. Why can't I be on the election commission?
Because it's state law. State law. It says we're required that there is the two major parties, the party that is in control in the legislature has 3 Republican spots as it is now, and the Democrats have 2. And it's done through state law. Well,
I don't like it. I have a problem with that because I have my issues with the parties. I have my issues with all sorts of people and all sorts of things. I just think it's disenfranchising for those of us out there that want to be part of things and want to, because again, for me, like as part of the show, I don't want to do anything. I want to be more involved, but I don't want to do anything getting involved that's going to put me in any sort of position where it's going to conflict with the show and talking to people on the show and becomes an issue like that.
Correct.
And so I'm looking at these little auxiliary ones that are less like flashy and important. Not that they're not important, but that one seems like something I could be a part of that. Right. I could do some good. I could be more involved, except I can't because I'm not a party member. Man.
If that's the only thing in state law that you don't like, you're doing pretty good.
I'm sure
there's
that's
plenty of other things. I always tell people though, I do want to add one thing. I said I want to encourage everybody to act with civility and respect. I said too often now, and I attribute it to the 24-hour news cycle and social media, that people think they can say anything and it doesn't matter. And I guarantee you that if we're not going to agree all the time. I don't even agree with myself all the time. So it is okay to disagree, but just respectfully. I mean, and most people don't, but you get some emails that they tell you how despicable you are or that you make them puke. And, and just go on and on and on. And I said, am I really going to want to help that person when they need help? Right. I will, but it's really hard to communicate when people are using profanity or anything else. And just, it starts with each person, and we need to be respectful because, we might not agree on that one issue, but we might agree on 9 others. But for some people, you could totally cut off those lines of communication by being hateful.
Right.
And I just said they weren't raised the same way I was raised.
Well, I think you said it best last time. You said something along the lines of you're the youngest of the crew, and that when big brother, big sister told you to do something and they were being mean and bullyish at you, your gut reaction is to do the exact opposite. And I think
that is true.
And as much as you are special, I don't think that is a special thing. I think a lot of people are that. There's the grit your teeth, and I'm going to show you why you're not get to tell me what to do kind of thing. I think that's normal. Well, Becky, I'm going to...
You're tempted to, but you don't. Anyway, have a great day.
I'm going to play us out. I appreciate you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Outro music, Becky Massey, everybody. Good fun. Interesting stuff. We learn things. And as she said, let's be nice about it at least. And so we're not going to learn more by yelling at each other. So figure out how to communicate your needs and your desires and understand, and don't be rude because you don't understand. So we're Almost Agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Our website is up and live. It's almostagreement.com. You can check out all the episodes there. I'm working the backlog in, but for now, the last 20 episodes are up. Major podcast providers, we're on all of them. Give us likes, shares, some good reviews, stuff like that. Help us get the word out. The baseball team, the baseball committee crew, whatever their official title is coming in later today. We're going to work on that. Try to understand the financing a little better. We're going to keep working, and we're going to keep doing shows. Just a general heads up, I am going on vacation next week, so we might have a week with a few less shows than normal. But I'm sure I'll do my best to make it up to you guys on the other side. Thank you so much. We're Almost Agreement. Stay tuned.